Hey, what's happening, everybody? Robert Phoenix here, coming at you from another angle. Let me see if I can find you guys on YouTube. Give me 1 second here. I'll try to close the loop. Change the account. Uno momentito, por favor. Why does can I get an easy button like one of these days? Would that be too hard for me to just get an easy button? Shit. Pardon my language. Still gonna try to navigate through some things here. Hopefully you're seeing me and hearing me. I'm going to try to mirror this on YouTube just to find out if YouTube even lets me get on YouTube. All right, let's see what we got. Okay. Getting there slowly, but surely. We are moving into the zone here. All right, let's see what we got. All right, this should be my channel. And let's see, my channel. Let me get to my channel. Oh. Let's see what we got here. I got to find my channel. All right. Okay. Look at, I'm live. Yeah, baby. I'm live. Live on arrival. Can't keep a good man down. That's what I'm talking about. You cannot keep a good man down. So I'm not really sure how this is going to go today. I got to get into chat. All right. Okay, there we go. All right. So I'm using a new client today. You can see up at the top right, it says powered by StreamYard. You can see that. There we go. So I have a StreamYard. I'm using StreamYard now instead of Zoom, because Zoom was not allowing me to get into YouTube, which is problematic. Like YouTube and Zoom were not playing nice, and I think that's probably on purpose. And I'm not being paranoid. Okay, let's see who we have here. So you see, we're working. I'm always working. I'm always, one of the things that I have in my favor is I've got a lot of Irish in me. I've got a lot of Irish, and apparently some Dutch too. And apparently the Dutch are stubborn. And I'm getting bit up by the skeeters today. Okay, I'm gonna try to get focused on point here. I may have to get away, man. You've already had breakfast, dude. Get away. All right, let me see who's in Chatlandia. We got Steve, my man. What's going on? FUP77, 1-0 Dragon in the house. Lisa Marie, Sticky Marks, Judy Anderson. Hi, Judy. Joe Dimitri, Jennifer Fitzgerald, Chris D. What's happening? Deborah Lewis. Let's see what else we have here. Sticky Marks, Wendy Quintana. Hello, Frank Bright. Good morning, Frank. Fifth Wall, Kestrel in the house. Colleen, right here at the beginning. Jimmers, 333. And there is Natasha Lloyd, Dawn and Maury in Pensacola. 3 dogs, 1 cat. Sounds like a sitcom to me. Yes, had a really good show with Jimmy yesterday. If you haven't seen my stuff with Jimmy Brent, hold on 1 second. I'll be right back. I got to deal with this little situation. I'll be right back. Hold on. Don't go away. Don't go away. Okay, I'm back. All right. All right. So let's get to it. There's a lot to talk about. So what's up with this freaking Zoom webinar thing, man? This just got to end. See you later. See you later, Zoom. I think Zoom might be taking a permanent vacation. That's my sense here. Permanent vacation. I got to try to find the where am I here? Yard Barker. So I'm using a new client today. It's called StreamYard. As you can see, powered by StreamYard, right at the top there. So I'm on a learning curve. I'm just throwing this thing together. I want to thank my good friend Bev down in Virginia Beach for pointing this out. Yeah, pants are a good choice. I mean, I had some shorts on, but the mosquitoes are out in force. Hope they don't get the Zika or Corona. Audio seems to be better than Zoom. Oh, good. Very, very good. Hey, hit the like button if you can, please. Let's get those algorithms pumping. And I'm going to continue also to look at other options, DLive, etc. There's a DLive app, which you can get on your phone, because I know a lot of you guys like to listen to this stuff or watch this stuff on the phone. And let me just try to go back to the yard stream stuff. Yeah, so there I am. Okay, and I can actually, oh, this is cool, right? So I can actually see you now. I can see, okay, this is great because I can see your comments inside of YardStream. This is cool. This is a really good product. Really, really good product. Phoebe, what's going on? And then there's Robert RS, my man Robert Scanlon. All right, so let's try to get caught up. I haven't figured out how to use like the screen share and stuff. So that I'm just gonna go ahead and make this my new client from here on out. I'm gonna sign up and get the the high bandwidth or whatever. So from now on, we're going StreamYard. It will not be powered by Zoom. Besides, Zoom took the knee, and I'm not into companies that take the knee. That you take the knee just before you put your head in the guillotine. That's what happens. Am I right? Charles says, Larry, Catherine Austin Fitz interviews Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, absolutely loaded. Yes. Hey, Cheryl, what's going on, Cheryl? Good to see you. Very good to see you. All right, very good to see you. Okay, so yeah, I'm in the client. I don't have to go back and forth to YouTube. This is great. I can just stay right here, and we'll just continue to improve the quality of the stream. I'll check into DLive, have a backup. Got you covered. Everybody who subscribes to this channel, this is, I'm here for you, right? I'm here for you 6 days a week. So whether you subscribe and just get the stream, or you subscribe and actually get you sign up for the subscription. And by the way, I will have to keep Zoom, I believe, for some webinar stuff, and just give me a little bit of time, like the next 2 weeks or so. I got to get my new website up. I've got once I get my new website up, I'm going to have some more features, and then I'm going to move forward with some webinars. I know a number of you have signed up or looking forward to that. I already did one. And you're going to, depending on what level you signed up at, you can attend either one or two free webinars. And again, if you haven't gotten your transit report from me, please just email me, right? Just email me email me that you didn't get it, okay? Because I have a ton of details I'm trying to swim through, and I want to make sure and sometimes they slip through the cracks. So I want to make sure that everybody gets what they need, okay? So just send me an email, remind me, and I'll try to work on those this week before we hit Mercury retrograde. So What is the title of the interview? Sorry, dogs were barking. Oh, that was what happened to Charles. Thinking about attacking statues, making signs, white lives matter. What do you think? I think you should be very, very cautious about how and where you do that. That's what I think. Because it's pretty clear that we are in the midst of the Cultural Revolution. And you're witnessing it. You're living through St. Petersburg, 1917. I've been talking about this now for quite a while. A bit of a difference between now and then, but still, this is where it's at. All right, let's get into a little invocation here because it seems to be helping. People seem to like this. Seems to improve the quality of the stream itself. Dear blessed and holy Father, Mother God of the great central Sun, which is the universal light, the light of Yeshua Sananda Emmanuel. We ask that only the highest and best information come through this stream at this possible time, and that we ask that we have the courage, the faith, the heart, the wisdom, and the higher knowledge to live through and participate through these challenging times. And we do so in the name of love and service for all and in all and through all. And let Logos emanate through all of our affairs at the highest possible level. And in that, we have faith and we have trust that all will move according to plan, and we'll all know what our role is as the great cosmic plan unfolds for each and every one of us. And if there is any karmic residue between each and every one of us, let it be clarified, purified, cleansed, and removed so that we may enter back into our lives as sovereigns when this transmission is over and done, and so be it. Okay, let's get rocking and rolling here. So, where do I start? Where do you want me to begin? Okay. First of all, last night I had a bunch of stuff to go over with the eclipse. I'm not going to do that, but it is important because we are staring down probably one of the most important eclipses in a very long time. So this eclipse coming up is the companion eclipse to the 1225 eclipse, and I had that all lined up, ready to go. I was going to go through that last night, show you the relationships. I will do that, by the way. I'll probably do that this week because the eclipse is on the 20th. And maybe once I figure out how to do screen shares on StreamYard, I'll do that tomorrow. And I'll make that a point. Okay. I'll definitely make that a point. So what I wanted to talk about now is how quickly things are moving and how, in a lot of ways, just how much of a staged reality that we're living in right now. And I talked a lot about this with Jimmy Brent over on his show, which is okay, it's a Matrix show. What is it? I got to go back. Let's see, what is it? I always space out on Jimmy's show. Steve, if you could put a link into the chat, that'd be awesome for Jimmy's show again. I'd be really appreciative. Great show. It's Inside the Matrix. That's it. Thanks. I always want to say Uncovering the Matrix. So Jimmy goes back a long ways. Like Jimmy was involved in this whole kind of cosmic truth game, going all the way back into the late 80s, early 90s, and he was working with George Green a lot on working on this magazine and these newsletters. And George Green pops up in the interview. The late George Green pops up in the interview that I did with Jimmy yesterday. So Jimmy's really well grounded and knows a lot. Like, when I can get on with a host or another person who's interviewing me, and they have a really good body of knowledge, it's really great, man. It's kind of like two people that are in a canoe swimming, just paddling downstream and hitting the rapids really fast. So that's 90 minutes. You got 90 minutes of really dense, nutrient-rich information. You definitely want to check that out. So one of the things we talked about is this kind of this veil of Maya that we're living in, and then the Crimmies. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago on the Friday Farcast, and this idea that we live in a realm of illusion, which was always a very spiritual kind of concept. We thought about it from that perspective. It's like, oh, okay, well, this doesn't really exist. It's just an accumulation of molecules and atoms, and there's massive space between the atoms, and there's whole universes inside of that space. And this thing is here because we agree upon it, right? We agree that this is here and this is here. And so, yes, part of the illusion of this experience has a lot to do with kind of consensual agreement and the fact that it is a shadow play theoretically of our own five senses, right? So that's the whole spiritual kind of, and then the Maya has to do with ignorance and illusion, and people not living with the truth, and you have a whole bandwidth of people that are living a very illusory kind of experience together. So their illusion creates this wide bandwidth and network effect, and so the illusion then has a grounding and a basis in so-called reality, right? So this is the kind of the spiritual version of Maya. But what we're seeing is this idea of Maya become manifest before our very eyes, because we can't even really trust reality anymore. We can't really trust how it's presented. And this was all part of the plan at some point. They were going to make reality so distorted that once they had achieved kind of this saturation point, that they'd be very, very close to activating their goals. Because once people don't have any moorings, once people don't believe that anything is real, then everything is possible, right? Everything is possible. Everything is permitted at that point. And that's really what's going on right now. We're seeing the manifestation of this idea that people don't believe in so-called reality. And why? Because now everything is permitted. Like you can go to a six block area in Seattle and essentially take it over. By the way, I was watching a live feed last night from Seattle. There's a, and I'm going to share some developments here that are very important for you to kind of wrap your head around. Okay. So I was watching a YouTube channel called woke.net. And essentially what they do is they will do live streams from various areas. So you can see what's going on in Denver. You can see what's going on in Seattle. You can see what's going on in Portland. You can see what's going on in Los Angeles. And I was watching the citizens of Chaz. What do they? I don't think they call themselves citizens. The comrades of Chaz. The comrades of Chaz were marching out of Chaz down to another police precinct. So they were on their way to theoretically take another police precinct. This is in another part of Seattle. And they got there, right? Just walking down the street, very brazen, not being obstructed at all by anybody in communist, socialist Seattle. And it's been communist socialist for a while now, with Jenny Durkin, Mayor Jenny Durkin, who is, you can just tell she's an avowed socialist communist. And see, one of the things that Seattle done is Seattle was involved in catch and release very early on. So Seattle has been essentially demoralizing the cops now for like the last 5 years, 6 years, however long Jenny Durkin's been mayor of Seattle. And if you watch that video, Seattle is Dying, which was done by KOMO, the local Seattle, one of the news stations up there, it's exactly what they talk about, where they have people who have been arrested upwards of 40 times on a number of charges, and the cops can do nothing. They have no ability to hold these people, have these people incarcerated for any period of time that allows them to have any form of rehabilitation, right? Catch and release, catch and release, catch and release. So that mechanism was in place. All right. So they were preparing and priming the pump for all this to happen, right? Preparing and priming the pump. So they went down to the station, and I don't think they took it, but they're now, Chaz wants to extend their boundaries. Chaz wants to extend their borders. And I will go on record here and say that Jenny Durkin will allow them to do as much as they want. Like if they want to take over all of Seattle, she'll let them. She'll let them, or at least most of it. Not all of it, most of it. She will let them. She'll enable them. Okay, so one of the things that you need to pay attention to now is you need to pay attention to the act that they've changed. Chaz has changed their name. And when I looked at all these different streams coming through woke.net, They all had a very different name associated with them. And the name is CHOP, CHOP. Now, I don't know what the acronym stands for, but I do know what it means. And CHOP has to do with beheadings. It has to do with guillotines. Keep that in mind, okay? So this is a replay of the the replay of the Jacobin Revolution, the French Revolution, which is another revolutionary sort of moment in time that does have some resonance with the time we're in, because we looked at Donald Trump's chart, and Donald Trump has fixed star Algol at 26 degrees on his Taurus midheaven, right? Fixed star Algol, the star of decapitation. Fixed star decapitation. Boom, right? So now this is a theme now that's starting to enter into this this kind of, how do I say this, non-consensual reality, right? It is a non-consensual reality. So when we live in a non-consensual reality, there are two things that happen. Number one, Maya becomes even more palpable, right? Because when you're in a consensual reality, the whole idea of Maya, it has kind of a more diminished capacity or more diminished role. But when we're in a non-consensual reality, where people aren't agreeing on hardly anything, then what happens is that the semblance of order, or the semblance of this kind of molecular structure which binds everything together, begins to dissipate and fragment. And that's when Maya really enters into our awareness. That's when we begin to see that things really, on some level, aren't what they really are. And the media has been playing a really significant role around this. Now, if you get into the George Floyd stuff, and you really, really, really get into the George Floyd stuff, you will begin to see so many holes and so many anomalies with what happened with that event, that it's very clear that we're in wag the dog, CIA, false flag operation, illusory Maya territory. So there's a lot of stuff here around the George Floyd thing that I really haven't unspooled, but there's plenty to be unspooled. So let me just give you one example. The young woman who supposedly videotaped the whole George Floyd thing, her name is Darnella Fraser. You go through any of the search sites, right, like Intellius or LifeSearch or whatever, there is no Darnella Fraser. She does not exist. Just like when I looked up George Floyd from Minneapolis, there is no George Floyd in Minneapolis. Like, he was there for how many years? 3 years, 4 years? You would think that there would be some record at some point of him being in Minneapolis. No, there's no record of him being in Minneapolis at all. There is a George Floyd associated with Houston, but not Minneapolis. What about Derek Chauvin? There's no record really of Derek Chauvin in Minneapolis as a cop. There is a Derek Chauvin who's listed and whose residence is clearly listed in Florida. And the Derek Chauvin that we see listed through Intellius is a real estate agent. Okay, so here we go. Right now we're getting into some very interesting territory. Like, who are these people? Where do they come from? What was their goal? So I want to go back a little bit to the Boston Marathon, which is what Jimmy and I were talking about yesterday, and the whole thing with the Tsarnaevs. All right. And this is kind of important to understand. So when the whole Boston Marathon thing went down, I stayed up all night. I watched this thing. I watched the elder Tsarnaev theoretically be stripped down and then brought into a cop car. There was also this other storyline that he was run over. I mean, so the storylines get very, very confusing. Okay. Then, of course, there's the big shootout at the boat. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev supposedly gets his vocal cords cut, right? He gets his vocal cords cut and cannot testify. And then if you look at Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, who is the guy who shows up in court, and then the original Dzhokhar, listen to the name, Dzhokhar, right? Dzhokhar as a joker, the joke. Think about that now. These are important kind of clues. They don't look the same at all. They look very, very different, okay? And he's represented by a woman by the name of Judy Clark. And Judy Clark, again, blows my mind. Judy Clark, supposedly represented Jared Lee Loughner. And Jared Lee Loughner was the guy who supposedly shot Gabby Giffords and the judge, remember, in Arizona? Okay, remember that? All right, so Jared Lee Loughner, who, by the way, was proven by Ed Chiarini to not exist. Now, if you don't know who Ed Chiarini is, he's the guy that does Well Aware One. Ed is really eccentric. He's not an easy guy to get along with. I don't think all of his matches are correct. I think some of them are off, but he does have some really, like when he did the breakdown of what happened with Gabby Giffords and Jared Lee Loughner, I thought it was brilliant. It was spot on. Basically, he exposed that whole group. I believe it was Tucson, if I'm not mistaken, as actors. They were actors. Jared Lee Loughner is an actor. Okay, so Susan Clark represented an actor. And by the way, who pays for her? That's the other thing, right? So Jared Lee Loughner would have gotten representation from perhaps like a local, PD, right? A public defender, right? Even though Gabby Giffords was federal public defender. No, Susan Clark goes in. Who pays her, right? Who pays her? Jared Lee Loughner didn't have a pot to piss in, theoretically, so who pays her? Who else did Susan Clark represent? She represented Ted Kaczynski. Okay, so now you got Jared Lee Loughner. Now you got Ted Kaczynski. Right, things are looking very, very weird at this point, right? And Ted Kaczynski hated her. He called her a bitch. And somebody who, really, screwed up his case. Ted Kaczynski was brilliant. Whatever you think of the Unabomber, the guy was brilliant. He saw the world that was coming. He totally saw it. Read the manifesto. I'm not supporting the manifesto, but read the manifesto. It's prescient. Who else did she support? Susan Smith, the woman who killed her 2 kids, put them in the car, right? Drowned them, right? Is that what she did? Susan Smith, she represented her. She represented Ramzi Youssef, freaking bomber. Like this woman has a history and a track record of representing the most undesirable and never ever really getting any kind of true quote unquote justice. So now she's representing Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. It's amazing. She's like the Gloria Allred of terrorists and mass murderers. Very bizarre shit. Okay. So what happened in Boston? This is important to understand. First of all, the Tsarnaev's uncle married into a CIA family. That's a fact. And he was involved in a CIA operation. Where are they from? Were they from Kyrgyzstan, I think? Or they were from Uzbekistan? I think they were Uzbekis, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so and the uncle lived in Arlington, Virginia. How about that, right? So he married into a CIA family, and the woman that he married, her father was the head of CIA operations in that part of the world. So now the Tsarnaevs are connected to the CIA. So here's what I think happened, right, for the Boston Marathon. I want to bring all this stuff forward. So it's really important to pay attention here. I think that because when you look at the Boston Marathon, Emily and I talked about this thing called echo and mirrors. She was the one that brought it up. And that's when they have 2 things going on simultaneously. So at the Boston Marathon, they had 2 events going on simultaneously. They had this event that was taking place kind of as the real Boston Marathon, and they had another event that was taking place simultaneously in a fairly close proximity, which looked like the same event that was taking place at the Boston Marathon. So they have echoes and mirrors. And my feeling about the Boston Marathon is that they were trying at that time, they were going to have an event and they were going to blame it on a quote unquote white supremacist, right? I think that was going to be their white supremacist kind of go to the Boston Marathon. It made a lot of sense, right? Boston, the Tea Party, all that stuff, right? The whole Boston Tea Party thing was bizarre anyway. Like Paul Revere and those guys, was it John Hancock, Paul Revere, Sam Adams? They all dressed up like Indians. Theoretically, right? They were dressed up like Indians. They couldn't even dress up. That's a whole other different story. Anyway, so I think that they were going to go in on the lone white nut terrorist kind of theme or narrative, but for some reason it didn't work. And these people have like these backup events, like the Tsarnaevs were the backup event, just in case something didn't go right. And if you go back and look, there's so many pictures of the Tsarnaevs. Like they are really clear. You can see them. They weren't like hidden or buried in a crowd somewhere. I mean, you could see them. as part of the event, right? So I think what happened is that something didn't go the way they wanted. The Tsarnaevs, through their uncle, were part of the backup plan, and they knew it, right? That they knew they were part of this backup plan. So then they activated the Tsarnaev narrative, and then that happens, and of course, Boston gets thrown into martial law. All this crazy shit happens. But that's not the real story, right? I don't believe that's the real story at all. And I don't believe either of them are dead, by the way. I think that they're probably alive somewhere. Who knows where they are? They're probably both operatives. And whoever that guy is that they wheel out in court. So what's also interesting is that three of the guys who are shown running around the Boston Marathon look suspiciously like three of the guys that are part of the police crew in Minnesota. Now, I'm not saying that's them, by the way, but there are some similarities. And there are guys walking around the Boston Marathon. And you look at that event, there are guys running around, and they look like that they're private security, or they're spooks that are being hired out, or their spooks have hired them out, and they've used them as part of the event, right? They're contract workers. So the Boston Marathon is a really interesting thing to look at in terms of this idea of how reality is staged for us. And we see this again and again and again and again. And one of the things, and I was thinking about this, and I talked about this on Jimmy's show, is how these things happen in pairs. And that gets back into the whole Gemini piece, right? So let's go down and just break it down and look at the list. So we have the two most famous school shootings in recent memory, not Columbine, by the way. Columbine's different era, different time, happened before a lot of these kids were born. So what do we have? We have Sandy Hook and we have Parkland, two school shootings, right? What about nightclubs? We have two major nightclub shootings. One, actually three now. I guess two here in the States. One would have been the Pulse nightclub, and the other being the nightclub in it was a bar in L.A., right? That bar and grill. So we have two of those events, okay? Not counting what happened in Paris. Let's just keep it in sort of continental U.S. So you have those two events, right? You have the two school shootings. Then you have the two church shootings. Of course, one being in South Carolina, the other being here in Texas. Then we have the two synagogue shootings, one in Pittsburgh and one in California. So the only thing that we haven't seen that's marked with two is the shopping store. Oh, what about cinemas? Yeah, there are two cinema shootings as well. One cinema shooting, of course, is Aurora, right? The Aurora shooting when the Batman film. By the way, that was a really interesting event because I was way back in the day, and Jay Widener and I did a show, and that was back when I was on Spreaker or might have even been Blog Talk, and Jay was supposed to go to that movie that night. That movie, right? That exact movie in that exact theater, but he did the show with me. How weird is that, huh? We got into the whole Batman thing and everything. All right, so that's a movie shooting. There was another movie shooting in Lafayette, Louisiana at another cinema. So you see how these things happen in pairs, and they tend to kind of have this echo effect, right? This Gemini echo effect. Now, the one thing that hasn't paired off yet, and I would say probably keep your eye on that if there's going to be a so-called another shooting, is the Walmart shooting in El Paso, which was staged in I always forget the Beto O'Rourke's hometown, right? Of course, that's Beto's town. So that made no sense at all. You had a guy coming in from Dallas who happened to be half Latino or half Hispanic, could have shot up any place along the way, decides to go to a border Walmart in El Paso. And of course, Walmart is wired with security, and all we can get is one little grainy image from the whole deal. It makes no sense. But if I were to say that there would be another pair, it would be something like that. It would be in another kind of enclosed retail setting, although all the retail settings have been looted for the most part, so why would they want to do that anyway? It's just a thought. But you see how we have the echo effect with these pairs? It's very interesting. So I'm sharing the Boston Marathon thing because there are some very, very deep forces here at work that are manipulating reality for a very specific reason. Okay, very specific reason. All right, so let's go back to the George Floyd event. One of the things that's unusual, although some of you are very, very switched on because that's who you are, is that theoretically, this Derek Chauvin character had his neck on George Floyd for 8 minutes and 48 seconds. 8 minutes and 48 seconds. 8:48 was the time that the first plane theoretically hit the first building, theoretically, in New York City on 9/11. You see the mirror effect there, right? We're back into the Gemini territory. 8:48, 8:48. And there's all kinds of crazy syncs around this idea of this echo and reflection, this idea of the Gemini effect, right? The polarity. So, okay, let's go back to Trayvon Martin. I talked about this on with Jimmy's show. I'll bring up a little bit. I won't say everything, but I talked about Jimmy, but I'll bring a little bit forward. So let's go back to the Trayvon Martin event. So the Trayvon Martin event has some interesting syncs in connection with the George Floyd event. Okay, so first of all, the Trayvon Martin event is that first event that gets our attention. So who theoretically is the guy who goes after Trayvon Martin and kills him because Trayvon Martin is stalking the neighborhood and being a menace to society? It's a guy by the name of George, right? George. That's his name, George. And what are we talking about in Minneapolis? George. So we have two Georges now. Okay, two Georges. And what's his last name? His last name is Zimmerman, George Zimmerman. Who's from Minneapolis or Minnesota? A guy by the name of Robert Zimmerman. Zimmerman. You does that ring a bell? AKA Bob Dylan. What sign is Bob Dylan? He's a Gemini. So now again, there's weird echo events starting to take place. Trayvon Martin's father, Tracy Martin, and I've chronicled this quite a bit. Trayvon Martin's father, Tracy Martin, is a Mason. Right? There are pictures all over him, in his Masonic garb, doing all that Masonic stuff. And oddly enough, he even seems to appear in the Illuminati card game years before all this comes out, okay? Years before. So if you go into George Floyd's Twitter account, you'll see that George Floyd's father is a Mason. He's got all kinds of Masonic stuff on his Twitter account. You see this weird kind of echo effect that's going on. It's very strange. So really it lends this sense that reality in many ways is very, very scripted, right? Played out. It's very, this is the script of the Matrix. But we're getting to a point now where the reel on the film, right? The old film projectors, the reel is getting ready to be unspooled because they're basically running out of. This is it. They're in Endgame now. What we're seeing now is an aggregation of Endgame, all in. It's the all in Endgame. Flip the U.S., flip the West. That's where we are right now. Tear down all the cultural institutions, the statues, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all happening. It's all right out of the Marxist playbook. All out, right out of the Marxist playbook. So reality is a very odd thing, right? It's very odd and seems staged at not just staged, but these events tend to be staged in most cases. And I would say that most of the major events, most of the major things that have happened that grabbed our attention, sucked our emotion out of us, drained us of our precious, divine energy or illusion. I don't care what race or what creed or what color you are, right? This is a universal essence that flows through all of us. I would venture to say that almost every event that we've witnessed ever since 9/11, and I say major, has been staged. It's all part of the demonstration. All part of the demonstration. Now, there are various things that happen along the way. I'm not saying that there are people that didn't die. Of course people die. Of course people die. But I'm also saying that there's many cases where what happened did not really happen. It happened in a way that was absolutely and utterly staged. Just like when we looked at Chaz last week and how that the 6-block radius actually looked like a movie set. I mean, it looked like a movie set. You go deep down into the George Floyd rabbit hole. And by the way, I would recommend Miles Mathis and his website on this tip, like going down that rabbit hole. Go check out Miles Mathis and his website. He has people that now he works with, and they're all kind of sleuthing and breaking things down. If you know Miles Mathis, he really gets into genealogy and peerage and things like that. Some of which I think is good, some of which I think is a little borderline. But I would say that I trust Miles Mathis more than I don't trust him. Okay, because he goes places where a lot of people won't. And he doesn't do interviews, and he's not a big cost celeb. He's really into just writing, right? And I think there's some purity around that, by the way. So you go into that, you go down the George Floyd rabbit hole, and you'll find connections to people that live in places like Arlington, Alexandria, Fairfax. Gee, I wonder why. Right, I wonder why. So we're seeing productions. These are productions. These are staged productions. And even when you look at the two pictures of Chauvin and Chauvin, they're not the same face. These are different people. We pointed that out last week. So I think this is really, really significant. But what's happening now is they're using Maya. They're using Maya and the power of Maya, the mass illusion, right? This is the power of the lie. This is the power of the occult and esoteric lie. They're using that now to fan the flames of dissent and revolution, not only here in the United States, but the entire world, across the planet. By the way, don't you think it's kind of interesting that there are no riots or no protests for George Floyd in any place in Africa? Is that interesting? I haven't seen any George Floyd riots or protests in Jamaica. No. I haven't seen him in Barbados. I haven't seen him in Trinidad. Like, you would think, right, that the most aggrieved people around this would theoretically be George Floyd's ancestral clan, which theoretically goes all the way to Africa. But there's been they don't do it in Africa. There's nothing. Oh, by the way, I have some bad news, right? The president of Burundi, one of the guys who rejected the WHO, just died of a heart attack, 55 years old. Right. So he said, screw the WHO. We're not taking your vaccine. Get out of our country. He's gone. Again, theoretically. Virginia Roberts, the accuser of Prince Andrew, has bacterial meningitis. Not viral, but bacterial meningitis. So interesting, right? How this stuff unfolds in a strange sort of way. The one thing that I will be slightly, happy about, not real happy about it, but let's just say I'm not bummed out that Noel Ignatieff, who was probably the most anti quote unquote white or Anglo critic, like he basically was a scholar. He taught it, I believe, at Harvard. And said that the entire white race is racist, and they all must die. They all must die. All right. This was Noel Ignatieff's like major talking points, and the whole thing always blows me away. Right, blows me away that this like theoretical civilization. I say theoretical, by the way. This theoretical civilization that allowed Noel Ignatieff to go through all these different schools, to get a degree, to get tenured, to be able to spout his views, right? They're all part of this so-called culture. It always blows my mind when I see shit like that. Because if Noel Ignatieff tried to do that in Russia, he would not be allowed to do that. They take him out and they tie him up and they dump him in Lake Baikal, never to be seen again. Okay, it always blows my mind, right? So this system that's allowed these people to become educated, to buy property, to have home ownership, all these things. And all of a sudden, it's like, okay, we got to burn it down. So he was a big burn it down guy. Now, again, he apparently died of a heart attack in Tucson. I don't know if that's true or not. I know. I mean, there certainly is a kind of a death certificate that's out there. Right. But I thought it was interesting that just as this stuff starts to go off, one of the major proponents of really what this movement is talking about expires. I wonder why. It's an interesting thing to ponder. Okay, so we're dealing with something here where they're propagating a major lie, and it's mostly a production. I think most of these events are all production, stage productions. The Maya now is becoming palpable and real. Okay, how real is it? How real, and how far do they want to go? How far do they want to take their incendiary, burn it all down plan? Well, they're going after Gandhi's statue now. They want to take down Gandhi's statue. The guy who is probably best known for passive resistance, right? Passive resistance. peaceful, passive, non-aggressive resistance. The guy who was essentially, theoretically again, single-handedly in charge of getting the British, the British who specialize in colonialism, right, colonization, out of India. Now they want to tear his statue down. This is how bad this thing is getting, okay? So, I would not be surprised at some point if they want to tear down Martin Luther King's statue. I wouldn't be surprised if they want to rename every single Martin Luther King street across America into George Floyd Street. You think I'm kidding? I'm not kidding. You know why? Because even though Martin Luther King is so-called Black and African American, he's part of a different time and a different story. He's part of a different narrative. And that's not the narrative that they want moving forward. It's clear. It's clear. So even the most treasured of the sacred cultural icons will be exterminated. They will be eliminated at the hands of the Cultural Revolution. And Rosa Parks is kind of on the fence. She'll be on the fence. She might get a pass because she's a woman. Barely. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how deeply ingrained or integrated, the social justice or the cause or civil rights was prior to this time that we're in, because it's part of a different time. And that's not the social model that they want to embrace at all. So if I was a so-called Black American, right, I would be pretty upset. And again, I have some issues with MLK. Right? He was definitely working on the socialist communist side, and I've talked about this before. He was schooled at the Highlander School in Tennessee, a famous socialist academy in Tennessee, along with Rosa Parks and other people. Okay, so that's part of the record. At the end of the day, though, he was starting to go off the course, starting to go off the narrative, was going after the Vietnam War, and they didn't want that. He was taking it to another level. And I also think that he was being very effective at actually uniting people. And I don't think that they were really all that thrilled about that. Like, we'll give you civil rights up to a point, right? Just like, for me, it was like when that guy, the young doctor who was at the Sacramento State Capitol, the ex-Marine, started talking to the cops. I think that was a turning point, by the way. I think that was a turning point in this whole everything that we're seeing now. That event, more than any other, more than Carl Mankey, the barber, more than the gal in Dallas with the salon, more than the pub owner in New Hampshire, Maine. That was the turning point, because that guy addressed those cops, and he addressed them at their higher nature. And they listened, and they put down their arms, and they walked away. See, there was no extortion. There was no guilt. There was no threats. What he did is he appealed to their conscience, right? He appealed to their conscience, and they did not have to create some kind of false reality. And some people say, oh, was that real anyway? Pretty real to me. That guy's words are pretty authentic. And once I think that the so-called elites saw that, they wanted to put the pedal to the metal, because they saw what could be done when people really speak from their heart, not out of anger, not out of rage, right? Not out of this divide and conquer speech, but really appealing to their higher nature. If I was an elite and I was like kind of running this program, I would be very concerned about that, and I would hit the go button, right? And it wasn't long after that. I mean, now we have a whole new series of protests, right? They've displaced the other ones that were happening actually quite peacefully in a lot of ways. And again, it's because what we're dealing with Maya and a manufactured reality, and they do this again and again and again and again. So this is where we are now. We're now in a new phase. It's not going away. They continue to run the protests. Now they're using this CHOP. They put CHOP now out there. Let's think about that. Now, that is a trope. That is a meme, but it's very real. And CHOP is having to do with decapitation. Decapitation. That'll be the next kind of meme and theme that is going to be running through all of this. So there's other stuff for the George Floyd event that is really quite dubious. The George Floyd event took place, I think, near 33rd Street, if I'm not mistaken. and about half a block away is a Prince Hall Masonic Lodge. I mean, again, now we're into like, more, high illusion, what I would call, chaos magic. And LeBron James has a big tattoo, right? He's got a big tattoo of the Boule, like symbolizing the Boule Masonic order on his chest. So, and who's LeBron James been? He's been somebody who's been out in front with this whole kind of, woke social media consciousness. Anyway, this is where we're at now. We're sifting through this idea that Maya has become real. And the reason why it's become real is because we're being shown the stage effects, the craft, the illusion, the camera angles, the doubles. We're going to get into deep fake mode. There's a lot going on. And so this whole idea of Maya is expressing itself through the media now, through the media and these events. It's not just a spiritual construct. It is actually being shown to us that the world itself is completely illusory on a lot of levels. So we have to understand what truly is real to us, is valid. And that's a whole different discussion. All right, I want to talk a little bit about sports and shift the conversation. I want to talk about Roger Goodell. I want to talk about the NBA just a little bit here. Like, I'm so done with sports. I'm so over sports. Sports is done in my book. I'll never go back to sports again. Major League Baseball did not come out and support BLM. They did not come out and support BLM. Now they're getting tarred and feathered. So that's done. MLB is pretty much done. And now the NBA is saying, well, we're not going to come back and play unless the social justice issue is addressed. It's like, fine, don't come back and play. I don't care. I'm not going to miss you. I'm not going to miss the NBA and all their fucking woke political bullshit. Go away. Stay away. Kyrie Irving, stay away. LeBron James, stay away. Steve Kerr, stay away. Greg Popovich, stay away. Don't need it. Don't need it. You can. Then they're going to overplay their hand on this theoretically. But again, these people don't care now. They don't care about profits. Corporations have already stated this. We're going to put people over profits. Blah 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 blah. Right? We're going to give all this money to BLM, and trillions of dollars. By the way, billions of dollars, probably coming through the bailout to the major corporations who are now funneling it back. See how that works? Anyway, that's a whole other blueprint. So the NBA, stay away. Who needs you? See you later. Adios. Goodbye. But I want to talk about the NFL, and I want to talk about Roger Goodell. Now, this is an interesting piece. So the NFL now says, oh yeah, when we start the season up, national anthem, we're not going to have national anthem, which, by the way, I am in favor of. I'm in favor of not having the national anthem at any sporting event. We don't have to link patriotism with sporting events. Period. End of story. I'm okay with that. So fine. However, if they do have a national anthem, they're going to have one knee down. They're going to say, okay, we're on one knee. Oh, that'll be great. Now, the ratings for ESPN are in the toilet because ESPN has shifted from sports to wokeism, journalism, right? Wokeism commentary. One of their highest shows, which is the Stephen A. Smith show with Max Kellerman. The ratings were so bad that there was a show on the Motor Trend channel that had higher ratings than the highest rated show on ESPN. People are leaving ESPN by droves. They're not watching. The ratings are horrible, but they don't care. It's all part of the burn it all down. But let me talk about Roger Goodell. Roger Goodell is the commissioner of the National Football League. Interesting last name, Goodell, right? We've talked about this before. L being Saturn, right? L being Saturn. The elite, he's the good elite, and Roger. We all know what Roger means. Yeah, we know what Roger means. You Roger somebody. So Roger Goodell. So this is the good elite that's going to essentially Roger you. Roger that. And he did an about face. He did a 180 and said, okay, we were wrong. Kaepernick was right. Of course, there's social pressure in order to do that. But even before that, he brought Jay-Z in. I'm going to talk about Jay-Z. I'm talking about another event that happened over Atlanta. Try to bring the illusion thing back into the conversation before I leave today. Okay, so Roger Goodell, this is interesting. His father is Charles Goodell, or was, and Charles Goodell was a lawyer. Of course, he's a lawyer. Kind of kicking around New York politics. Okay, and at that time, the head of the Senate or major player in the Senate was Nelson Rockefeller. Okay, Nelson. So when Robert F. Kennedy was shot and killed, Roger Goodell's father took his place. Roger Goodell's father was not elected. He was named. Now, he subsequently went on to win a couple of other elections, but eventually he lost. There was a third-party candidate who eventually, cut him out. But Nelson Rockefeller appointed Roger Goodell's father to take the Senate seat that was vacated by the death of Robert F. Kennedy. Isn't that interesting? So his father was theoretically a Republican, but only in name. He was only a Republican in name. He was really not very Republican at all. In fact, he was more of a social democrat. But I found that to be quite interesting. So Roger Goodell is like 2 steps removed from the RFK death and the influence of the Rockefellers in his family. Of course he is. Charles Goodell went on to divorce his wife, whose last name was Rice, R-A-C-E, and then married a woman by the name, I think her name is Patricia Goldman. So now he marries this woman, and she becomes this kind of cause celeb inside of the media because she's a Republican and a Republican wife, the wife of a Republican senator who's in favor of abortion. Right? She's pro-choice. So this happens, I think, right around the time that Roger Goodell is about 18 years old, maybe. Goodell is like the same age as me. So now he's got his maternal mother gone. He has a new mother who is pretty much a socialist, far lefty socialist. And that becomes like one of the guiding lights in his life. So we can see now there's a lot of really sketchy stuff around Goodell, starting with the appointment of his father by Nelson Rockefeller. So we have Rockefeller connection, RFK connection, the mother, I guess they divorce, and now he's got a new mother, a new surrogate who is way more radical than his birth mother. And I believe she ultimately wound up leaving Goodell's father. I think she's still alive, by the way. Charles Goodell is no more. He's no longer around. So this is Roger Goodell and Roger Goodell's sort of bona fides, his pedigree. So he comes out of, and this is kind of interesting, right? His father had this reputation of being a turncoat, that he was a Republican only in his declaration, in his party status, when in actuality he was really somebody else. He's really doing the bidding of somebody else. He's doing the bidding of Nelson Rockefeller. So I think it's safe to assume that the son, Roger Goodell, is also still very much connected to the Rockefeller family, and that the Rockefeller family is still very much connected into what's taking place across the U.S. Now, I watched a very interesting interview by David Ray Griffin in Norman Dodd. And Norman Dodd was the guy who put out the Dodd Report back in the 50s. It's an interview worth watching. But one of the things that I think Norman Dodd was involved with is I think Norman Dodd was probably skull and bones. He went to Yale, although it doesn't come out that he's skull and bones. But he certainly brings out a lot of information. And he gets the Dodd Committee rolling, and they're looking at the pernicious influence of foundations, Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, all the big Carnegie. They're looking at all this stuff, and they found some very interesting information on these foundations. This is back in the 50s. And one of the things that happens, and it comes out in that interview, is that they give the educational system over to the Rockefellers, I believe in the 1920s. And so from 1920 on, the Rockefellers, and most of you know this, have been involved in the re-education of the United States. And the whole idea there was to get people engaged in collectivism. Right? That was the idea, collectivism. And this is what Lark talked about a couple of weeks ago, communitarianism, or the communitarians. So the Dodd report is quite interesting to that extent, right? But that's where the Rockefellers begin to really, really show up. But then the whole report is dropped, the committee's dropped, and then Norman Dodd never takes a swipe at this ever again. But it's worth watching. Some of the information is worth watching. It's on YouTube. You can find it. So again, what I think we're seeing with Roger Goodell isn't just Roger Goodell in the NFL. It is connected to the Rockefeller family. Jay-Z, now this was important when Jay-Z and the NFL decided to have a partnership together. Now remember, Kaepernick did not like Jay-Z, like the kind of different camps in some ways. But what was the name of Jay-Z's label? Rockefeller, right? You don't have that name, by the way. You can't name your label Rockefeller, Rockafella, Rockefeller. You can't have that name in your label unless you got connections, because there's a certain family that would object to that, highly object to that, right? So now we have, again, Roger Goodell making a connection with Jay-Z, who has this connection with his label and Rockefeller. And I would no doubt believe that the Rockefellers were indeed behind the formation of the label, the major label stuff, whole 9 yards, right? The music industry is just, laced with international financier, social Marxist bankroll. It has been for a long time. So there was a period of time back in the 90s when and it's on the internet, and you can see that there was a major decision made by the major labels that they were going to take. There were two directions for hip hop. It was either the kind of the woke, socially conscious version of hip hop, which at that time was exemplified by a group like Public Enemy or the Poor Righteous Teachers, Brand Nubians, that whole scene, Tribe Called Quest. They went down the hardcore rap, right? The gangster rap. And there's articles on this all over the internet. If you want, you could, So they made a choice. And I remember I was flying on a plane and I sat next to this young guy, interesting guy. He was a journalist, hip hop show. We talked a lot about hip hop. He was on the way to Europe. He's probably a socialist. And we talked about this very same moment, this very same kind of, fork in the road. And that's where the major labels took it. And this is a guy that was he was, street level. We talked about it, right? We talked about, how that came about and the ultimate impact on the culture, which was not a great impact. Not a great impact at all. Anyway, so now we have the connection between Goodell, Jay-Z, Rockefeller, right? We're seeing it all come together and, it's reality, right? Reality. It's stagecraft. So I want to go back to this event in Atlanta, and then I'm going to wrap things up. Now, you guys have heard about the event in Atlanta. It took place over the weekend. There's plenty of video that's out there. They got cop cams and everything, okay? So one of the things that you want to pay attention to in the video is the medallion that, what is it, Travian Brooks, the guy who theoretically got shot. You want to pay attention to his medallion. He's wearing the medallion of the 5 percenters. And the 5 percenters come out of Chicago a long time ago, the whole kind of Moorish science sect, which come out of the Nation of Islam, kind of a breakaway sort of esoteric community. And the 5 percenters claim that they are gods. This is why you have Charlemagne the God, because he's a member of the 5 percenters. Okay, that's the nomenclature. This guy is wearing a 5 percenter medallion. You know who else has been linked to the 5 percenters is Jay-Z. And anytime you get into secret societies, okay, you will find that at a certain level that they all kind of converge, but they all have sort of a meeting point at some point. So here we go. Now we have a guy with the 5 percenter medallion. He gets into a rumble with the cops. Theoretically, he gets on the ground, wrestles with the cops, looks fairly real on some level. Then you see sort of the taser action. You see him run off, right turn, and do the tase thing. And then you see, the cops theoretically shoot him. And now they're dismissed. Atlanta police chief resigns. Right. Burning Atlanta again. But is it real? Is it real? Again, I question the validity of the event. Now, I'm not saying that it didn't happen. I mean, theoretically, we're seeing it on the camera, but we don't really know, do we? We don't really know. We've seen too many events that stack up and look quite illusory. And each of the events now are used as an acceleration point. Like these are social accelerants for the burning down of the previous culture. This is all social Marxist stuff. And this is what they do. The social Marxists couldn't turn America into a class war. So what they've done is they've instigated a race war. And there's no better argument. There's no better example than the one I'm about to share with you. Okay. So there's a story that was up around the internet for quite a while. And it was this guy who was a postman and he worked in Chicago and he delivered mail to the Ayers residence. And Bill Ayers' mother would come out and tell him about this really, really bright young man that they knew and that he was eventually going to be president of the United States one of these days. Right. And so he's like, yeah. Okay. So then eventually, theoretically, this guy actually meets the guy she's talking about. And he said, well, I wasn't all that impressed. He was pretty cocky, though. But he also would have conversations with Bill Ayers' dad. And Bill Ayers' dad, by the way, ran one of the power companies. He was on the board of one of the power companies in Chicago. And he would talk to the mailman about his conditions, right? He would talk to the mailman about his conditions. Oh, don't you feel oppressed by your conditions? You're the proletariat. Don't you feel oppressed by having to do all this hard work and, carry out mail for all the corporations? And the guy couldn't give a shit. He said, don't talk to me about that. Right. So that's indicative of the fact that they really couldn't ignite a class war. They were able to do that in Russia. So instead of igniting a class war, what they've done is they've lit the fuse and they've ignited a race war, which is really, really unfortunate because it's very, very volatile. There's a lot of bad blood, and the bad blood could actually get a whole lot worse unless cooler heads prevail. But right now, they seem to be an end game, and they'll roll anything out. They'll roll absolutely anything out at this point, as long as it grabs your attention and continues to further the narrative. I mean, let's look at the thing in Atlanta again. I mean, let's say it is real. Let's say it is depicting an event that actually took place. Okay. So would you have an issue with the police shooting a guy who's shooting at them? And that could be a threat to other people. I mean, at some point, there has to be a line. What if that guy goes out and manages to knock the police off and he knocks off about 3 or 4 other people, right? That's possible, quite possible. So in that regard, the guy's resisting arrest. He's resisting arrest. When I was on my knees in Arcadia and I had the cop point a gun to my head, back in 1996, only because I was, parked in a church parking lot, seeing somebody who lived there. That's all I was doing. If I had resisted that arrest, that guy would have put a bullet in my head. And you would have thought twice about it. No body cams to seeing his partner. Boom, done. End of story, right? So that theoretically could have happened based on that event. The guy's fighting back. He's hitting them with a taser. Boom. Is that unacceptable now? Can police not deal with somebody who is actually a threat to them and a threat to the rest of the world or the rest of their community? Apparently, no, they can't, right? So that's that version of that, right? That is that version of that. So let's say it did happen. They're basically dismissing the fact that these guys were actually doing their duty, pretty calm. Things got hot, things got heavy. And the next thing you know, they're tackling him, shooting a taser at him, and bang, he's gone. 20 years ago, it's not a big deal. I mean, it's not that it's not a big deal. Let me rephrase that.
but it's something that was more kind of, I wouldn't say common, but it was standard operating procedure. You color outside the lines like that. I don't care what your skin color is, because I've seen it happen with, quote unquote, non-African American people. It's happened. Then you will be taken down. So that's that, right? But then the other potential is that it didn't happen the way that it really happened. Like, again, this could be something that's really staged. So I'm holding space for both of these actually occurring. The end result doesn't really matter, does it? They're burning down a Wendy's. And now they're adding more fuel to the fire. Oh, look at this, look at this, look at this. So every event that we see that's going to be related to any action like this is going to be another social accelerant. Remember, we got Mars and Aries coming up, and it's going to be in Aries for 6 months. All right. It's going to be a very intense time. I wanted to talk about that last night, but didn't get a chance. Love Yard Stream here, or StreamYard. It's going to be my new client. Let me check in with you guys to see where you're at. I can see all your comments, which is really cool. I don't even have to go to YouTube. They're all in the so-called studio here. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to checking out your comments, but they seem to not be happening. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Let's see. The guy was in the drive-through and passed out, was blocking access. Thank you for clarification. Let's see. Where are you going to move? Possible reason this happened in Atlanta is that they needed the southern city to fold. Squirrel, moral crimes are slippery. Yes, they are. It's also kind of this reenactment of the Civil War. And I talked a little bit about that with Jimmy yesterday. A little bit about that with Jimmy. What is this show? My suburb response: sell my house and get the fuck out. Yep. Probably a good idea. I don't think the race wars will work in Atlanta. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not an expert on Atlanta. I was there for the Olympics, which was very interesting experience. I read tarot at the Olympics in Atlanta for about 2 weeks. I have a lot of interesting stories to tell about that. And I don't know. I enjoyed my time there. I like the people. I made friends with this guy, really interesting guy. So I've told a story before, and then I'm going to get on out of here. So what I would do is I get right down by the Olympic Village, and they had a House of Blues down there, which they just put up. So in the morning, when there was shade, I would go to the other side of the street by this little market deli, and I would read out there because it was shady. And then as the sun would shift, I would move over to the other side of the street and get on the House of Blues side on the sidewalk. And that was great. I got a lot of people that would come to me on that side of the street. And I made friends with this one guy who was interesting, so-called Black African American dude. And before there was the Olympic Village, it was kind of a homeless encampment. Like, that's where a lot of people were living. And they basically, raised that thing to put the Olympic Village in. And he had been living there, and he had to move to another kind of abandoned location. And the thing that was great about him was that he was actually going to school, and he was studying, learning how to do cement work, bricklaying, real masonry, not fake masonry. And that's what he was working on. And this guy and we had a great time. Every day we'd hang out, we'd bond. He'd bring me stuff from the House of Blues, He was an official butt man, and he told me and described the difference between a watermelon and a pumpkin patch, as it as it applied to the derriere. Let's put it that way. He was very, very, very very specific about the vegetal or the fruit kind of correlations there, and he'd crack up. I liked him. He was a good guy. I met a lot of really interesting people on that trip, and a lot of them, really just roots, salt of the earth people. Okay, so I'm going to get on out of here. Thank you, StreamYard. You're my new You're my new go-to. I got to figure out how to do the screen shares because, you know, that's going to, but thank you, Yardstream. Be back here tomorrow. We're doing it. We're doing it live. 197 people. All right. So what is the order of the day? The order of the day is you got to take care of yourself first and foremost. I'm going to repeat this mantra often. It's very important. Very important. You need to live in two worlds at once, be in this world, but not of it. Okay. That's a very important allegory for where we are, to be in this world, but not of it, be fully invested, but also understand that we're really in a world of illusion, right? Just understand that. And once you're able to do that, then you can move accordingly and you really sharpen your discernment skills. Like you got to be a razor, you got to be razor sharp, laser sharp with your discernment skills. You know, I'm gonna say something here, right? I'm gonna share something, not because I'm trying to like vilify a certain person. I was wondering whether I should share this, but I'm feeling moved to share this now. So there was a person who has been in contact with me via email over, I don't know, maybe the last year and a half, 2 years, maybe. And I communicate with a lot of people that I've never met. Okay. I don't know who they are, but they've established, email communication. And it's like, okay. If I have time, I try to answer all the emails. And then this person chided me for something that I said on my show. And I'm not going to get into what I said. I don't want to kind of publicize it or go back to that. But they chided me for something that I said. And it's like, I had to really sit with that for a moment, And if I make a mistake, a real mistake, I will own up to it. But this was not really a mistake. It was an opinion. And it was an opinion that I felt I could talk about and ask a simple question, why? And it was deemed a low blow. And it's like, first of all, I do this 6 days a week. Okay. Some of you subscribe and support it. That's great. Some of you don't subscribe and don't support it. That's great. Right. I mean, I obviously it's great if you do, but I do this because it's my mission. Okay. It's my mission. And I figured that out a long time ago. But I'm not going to have somebody tell me what I can or cannot say or an opinion that I have on my show. Like there are plenty of other people who can and will do that. Oh, trust me. I don't need somebody from the kind of quote inside telling me what I can and cannot say on my show. And if I make a mistake, damn it, I'll admit it. I will admit the mistake. So I had to do something that I was not comfortable for me, right? I had to tell this person, I don't want to talk to you again. Please don't email me. Just don't email me. I don't have the time to go through and try to justify or talk about. I just don't have time for that shit. And please don't get all Karen on me. But that's the last thing I or anybody else need, to have a Karen, jam the frequency. And I was going to go through and list all the reasons why I objected to that email, but I didn't. I just said, we're done. Okay. And again, I got 3 planets in Libra. They'll actually be, more, I don't know. I like to be more balanced and fair and equitable and win-win. I mean, it's really a part of my chart, part of my nature. But so when I have to like cut a cord like that, it doesn't always feel good, but it was like, it had to be done. It had to be done. I had to have a boundary. And part of the reason why we're going through what we're going through is because we lost all our boundaries. All our boundaries. So I don't know, maybe there's a lesson in there for you. Certainly was for me. And I don't wish this person ill at all. I want them to be, happy and safe, and I want them to evolve, right? This is not a castigation. I'm not casting a spell upon them. I want them to flourish and be happy and all the things that we all want to have as part of our experience. But I wasn't going to sit there and say, you could tell me what I can or can't say on my show. That's ridiculous. Oh, by the way, Regina Meredith has a new video out with a new astrologer, and you'll probably notice that I'm not in it. And that's a whole other story, maybe for another time. I wish her well. I wish Regina well. Regina and I had a really, really great relationship. We had a really, really good run. Start going all the way back to my first show at Gaia with her, where I appeared on her show on Gaia, where she interviewed me, up until really a couple months ago. So I want to thank Regina for everything that she's brought, all the people she's brought into my life and my world, and all the great conversations that we had. And again, no ill feelings and no ill will towards Regina at all. I wish her all the best. And, this is kind of my kind of public recognition that we broke it up. No, it's all good. It's all good. Take good care of yourself. Find humor in life. Tucker Carlson has. Watch Tucker. He's now using humor as a weapon. It's a very effective weapon, by the way. All right, Chatlandia, I'm out of here. Use your head in order to discern what's real. Your heart to stay open to what's possible. How do I get rid of this comment here? Squirrel, I love you, but you took over my space here, Squirrely. Took over my space. Where am I going to move to? I'm going to be here for a while. I'm going to get into the D Live stuff just as a backup. But I like this. I like this StreamYard. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow. 8:45 sharp, Central Standard Time. Take good care of yourself. This is Robert Phoenix, signing off.